right, good evening, everyone. We have a double header this evening. We'll begin by calling to order the Tuesday, September 23rd, Timnath Landings General Improvement District Board meeting. Ms. Peters-Garcia, will you take the roll?
Yes. Chairperson Robert Oxmacher.
Present.
Co-chair Luke Wagner.
Here.
Board member Jeremy Holt.
Here.
Board member Bill Jenkins.
Here.
Board member Lisa Lake. Here.
All right, everybody's present. Would anyone care to amend the agenda this evening? All right, has anyone signed up for public comment on the Timnath Landing General Improvement District Board meeting? All right, I see no one. We will then move on to the consent agenda, consisting of one item, approval of the Timnath Landings GID meeting minutes from June 24th, 2025. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, nay. Consent agenda is approved unanimously. Anyone care to report? All right. We will move on to our single business item today, which is resolution number GID 03 Series 2025. Resolution accepting the 2024 GID audit performed by the Adams Group. Ms. Dennis.
There you go. Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Bonnie Dennis. I'm the accounting manager for the town of Timnath. I'm going to go over a very brief presentation on the General Improvement District audit that we did for 2024. So to give a little bit of highlights on the audit, we have to conduct an audit over the General Improvement District every year because it is a separate entity from the town. However, it does get included in the town financial audit. It all gets rolled up. A few brief highlights. We did have a net position of a negative $5 million, and that is primarily because of the outstanding liability of developer and town advances. The GID did not have any additional developer advances in this 2024 audit, but we did add about $7,000 in operating expenses, which is included as a town advance. We should have Eric Miller. He is our partner with the Adams Group to go over the audit opinion and governance letters. If there's any questions, he should be online here tonight.
Mr. Miller, are you out there?
I am. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can. Thank you for being here.
No, thank you. Sorry I couldn't be there in person tonight, but I'll keep it as short and sweet and open it up for any questions that you all may have. I'm going to start with kind of our required communication to governance. It's kind of the highlight, the 30,000 foot view of the audit process and the information that we're required to communicate out to council. Kind of the first piece, trying to decide where to start. If there were any difficulties throughout the course of the audit, we'd be required to communicate those out. For the GID, there were no difficulties to report out. There were no disagreements with management over accounting policies, whether currently existing policies or new policies. There were no adjusting or uncorrected journal entries. Essentially what that means is the trial balance that we received at the beginning of the audit is the same numbers that you see within the GID financial statements. There were no other audit findings or issues or nothing that raised to the level of being communicated out via this governance letter or a separate internal control letter. And then with that, for purposes of the GID for 2024, unmodified or clean opinion.
All right, thank you very much. I guess this time I'll ask if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, I guess, when do we anticipate that the developer would begin reducing the current $5 million in debt?
That $5 million was already paid by the developer, and so that'll be reduced when we issue debt later this year, and it'll be repaid via property taxes in future years. So that's what that $5 million represents.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Dennis, anything else we should know?
Nope.
All right. And then at this time, is there a motion to approve a resolution accepting the 2024 GID audit performed by the Adams Group?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on this?
Seems pretty straightforward.
All right, very good. Then all those in favor of approving the resolution accepting the 2024 GID audit performed by the Adams Group signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, nay? The audit is approved unanimously. And with that, the GID board meeting will stand adjourned. And I will now call to order the Tuesday, September 23rd, 2025 Timnath Town Council meeting. Ms. Pierce-Garcia, will you take the roll?
Yes. Mayor Robert Oxmacher,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Luke Wagner,
Here.
Councilmember Jeremy Holt,
Here.
Councilmember Bill Jenkins,
Here.
Councilmember Lisa Lake. Here.
All right, everybody is present and accounted for. Council members, any requests to amend the agenda this evening? Okay. Then we will move on to public comment, an opportunity for individuals to address council on matters related to the town. I would note that if anyone wishes to address council on item 7A pertaining to the Ladera South subdivision preliminary plat, I would ask that they wait till we call the public hearing on that matter. But other than that, is there anyone present? I don't believe anyone has signed up. Is there anyone present that would like to address council this evening? All right. Seeing no one, then we will move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of 2 items. First is approval of the September 9th, 2025 special town council meeting minutes. And second is approval of the September 9th, 2025 regular town council meeting minutes. Any requests to pull an item from the consent agenda? No. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, nay? Consent agenda passes unanimously. We will now move on to reports. I'll start over here this evening. Councilmember Jenkins.
Yes, I attended the opening ceremony for the adolescent unit at the Larimer County Behavioral Health Services facility at Longview campus. And what's significant about this is this facility, they've been, since they opened, treating juveniles, but we're limited to 23 hours, and then they'd have to either send them home, or if they needed overnight care or extended care, they'd have to transfer them either to Denver or Colorado Springs, which is a major problem for families with juveniles that needed this kind of help. So the new facility will be opening, I believe, next month. They're finishing staffing up and training. It's a beautiful facility. They'll be able to house kids from 12 to 17 overnight for extended behavioral care. And let me just, I'm going to do a little plug here, and this is for behavioral urgent care. They accept walk-ins, and this is for 12-year-olds to adults. Walk-ins at 2260 West Tribley Road in Fort Collins, or you can call 970-494-4200, extension 4, or you can text TALK to 38255. It's a great service and that Larimer County offers. And so I just wanted to make people aware of that. And that's it. It's a beautiful facility.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, anything?
So I had the opportunity to attend the Fall Festival this weekend, and I showed up a little late because my son had a flag football game. But as I was walking up, there was no place to park anywhere. So there was cars lined up pretty much all the way around in the neighborhood. So I don't know what the official numbers were, but I felt like this was our most attended Fall Festival ever. So I was really proud of the staff, and I was thankful for all that they did to get this festival together. I volunteered to clean up afterwards, and it was a long, I really appreciate all the work that they do to tear that thing down, because it was so much work, and the weather was coming in as well, so everyone was really hustling and trying to get it torn down. So it was really great, and Callie, I know, coordinates the whole thing with Tom. And so everybody was really moving, and I realized how difficult it is to, put it up and tear it down. So I want to just thank staff for all their hard work on that.
Absolutely, thanks. Yeah, I think we estimated 8,000. Yeah, amazing turnout. Councilmember Lake.
I just want to let everyone know that next Tuesday on the 30th at 5 p.m. I will be doing a council chat at Timnath Beer Works. No purchase required. So if anyone is interested, if they have any comments, suggestions, things like that, I will be there to listen and hear what everyone has to say.
Yeah, I just want to mention a couple meetings that I've been able to attend over the last couple weeks, but both our finance committee and our new Main Street board. And reason for mentioning it is just the outreach from our community members. Our finance committee grew, almost doubled in size recently, which is awesome. We have phenomenal community members on that, and the willingness of the Main Street board to dive straight in. There's a lot of work to be done there, and that group is getting to work quickly, and just super impressed with what our community's doing. So kudos to those that are involved in those.
Thank you. I mentioned it last time, but this Friday is the Timnath Wellington football game at Canvas, 7:30 p.m. I'll be there. Hope to see everyone else there. And I'm very excited. Got my Pulse install scheduled. So it's coming up first week in October, so I'll report back, but very excited to have that. I think I have a referral code if anyone's looking for one. All right, that's all I have. Council, anything else before we move on to staff? All right. I'll begin with finance. Scagliardi. All right. Council, any questions for finance? All right. Public Works, Director Stone.
Yeah, I do have something to report. So Vince Gentry, I want to introduce Vince Gentry, our Senior Civil Engineer and Development Review. He's been with us for 4 months. He has a lot of experience in the area, over 20 years of experience, so we're very lucky to have him. And so just want to introduce him since this is his first council meeting.
Yes, glad to have you here. All right. Thank you, Director Stone. Any questions for Public Works? All right. Community Development, Director Robinson.
I don't have any updates, but happy to answer any questions you may have.
Council, anything? A quick one. Police, Chief Scott.
We're going to have a coffee with a cop next Wednesday from 8 to 10 at Pedro's. If anybody can come, we'd love to have you there. Other than that, no other updates unless you have questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing that. Appreciate that. Tell your crew, I hope they dried out. I saw them over on Bus Grove attending to a situation there, and and they looked pretty wet in the rain, so I appreciate them being out there. All right. Anything else from staff? All right, then we will move on to our regular business items, beginning with item 6A, resolution number 59, series 2025, resolution accepting the 2024 audit performed by the Adams Group. Ms. Dennis.
Good evening again. So we are excited to get the 2024 financial audit report, or also known as the ACFR. It's the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. With this comes with additional good news that we reported on several months ago, was that we received the 2023 GFOA award. The GFOA award is really the highest award that we can receive for a financial report, and we are very excited about that. So it takes a village to get this report done, and the finance team is really excited for the first award that the town received for this report. With that, we do get comments on the report, and the comments were very minimal, so that was also a really big plus. And any of those comments were incorporated into the 2024 report. So I'm going to give a quick high level of the annual report and kind of what you see in the report itself. So the first thing is the letter of transmittal, and this really goes over the town's current financial state as well as looking forward. It's more of a future stated letter. And then we move into the management discussion and analysis, and this is really a comparison of the current year and looking backwards how we did from the prior year. Then we have the financial schedules and the footnotes, and this is the meat of the document. This is where all of the financials, the government-wide statements are located. It's where you really see the full picture of the town. And then we have the other required supplementary information, and this is the budgetary schedules. This is where you'll find the general fund, the general improvement district fund that we went over earlier. This is where you'll see those individual fund level statements. And then we have lastly is the statistical section, and this is really a performance indicator section. It goes over the last 10 years that the financials were for the town, but additionally it also includes things like number of assets, what our debt looks like. There's just a lot of really good information in that statistical section. So to give you a summary of the statement of net position and the overall financials for the town, the statement of net position is the overall net income for the town. So we ended at 2024 with $94.5 million. This is an increase of $12.9 million, which is 16% increase from 2023. Majority of that is from total assets. We make up 65% of the assets that the town holds is just related to all capital assets. And that's our infrastructure, our buildings, and so forth. But we do have liabilities, and that is $55.1 million at the end of 2024. And the majority of that is the long-term debt that we have for both the town and the TDA, which is $45.7 million. And you can find that in footnote 8. And then we also have a net pension and OPEB liability, which is $3.8 million. And that is a very long and very detailed footnote 11, if you'd like to review that. Then we have the statement of activities, and this is just like your profit and loss. This is all your revenue and expenses that you've had for the year. And we ended with 2024 with total revenues of $41.9 million. And that was a $5.6 million increase, or 15% over last year. A majority of that is related to the increase that we had for the impact fees. We also had expenses, and that was increased. The total expenses for 2024 were $28.9 million, but that increased by $7.1 million, or 32%. And the majority of that really is just capital projects. The parkway improvements is one, and the Wild Bean Park all started in 2024, even though we worked on those and finished them up in 2025. So there are a couple other highlights I wanted to go over. We did have a new pronouncement in this report, and that is related to accounting for compensated absences. It's very similar to what we've had before. We just had to do a minor tweak to make sure that we comply with this pronouncement. And that's just basically showing the additional liabilities for the town for things like vacation time, and we do have some sick time that we accrue for if we paid out an employee, for example. So we did go over this at the Finance Committee in really good detail on September 17th, just last week. We had a lot of great questions, and there was just a really good conversation over the financials, the state of the financials. We went into footnotes in quite a bit of detail. So we covered quite a bit in that meeting. And then lastly, I just want to point out that we're going to submit this also to the GFOA for the second award, and we do anticipating getting them. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eric Miller. He's got his additional audit opinions and governance letters to go over for this report.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Welcome back. Hopefully you're still out there with us.
I am. Thanks, Bonnie. I'm going to start again by kind of going through that same governance letter. This one's probably got a little bit more detail than the one did for the GID, just more going on for the town. As Bonnie had mentioned, or let me back up, you'll see that our reports are still noted in kind of a big draft watermark. I think the expectation is after tonight's meeting, we'll get everything finalized tomorrow, get everything submitted to the state before the September 30th deadline. Going back to the governance letter, probably the biggest thing that Bonnie hit on was that kind of para liability, OPEB liability, or excuse me, pension liability and OPEB liability related to your involvement with para. And I do think it's important to point out, you know, in my world, not everything's an exact science. We consider those numbers to be large estimates in all of the financial statements that we audit, strictly because they're based off of an actuary report. And those figures, as you've probably seen over the course of the last 3, 4, 5 years, they change significantly from year to year. So we do take the actuary reports, we take the para reports, perform calculations over kind of the figures that are applicable to the town in arriving at a kind of a conclusion that in all material respects, those numbers are correct. Kind of same situation as the GID, no difficulties, no disagreements with management, and same situation with any adjusting journal entries. The numbers that you see in your final report are the same numbers that were given to us at the beginning of the audit, which are the same numbers that have been reported out to you probably over the course of the end of 2024. So anything that you've been seeing or hearing with financial reports is what you're going to see in front of you in your final ACFR. Kind of jumping to the opinion, same situation as the GID, unmodified or clean opinion. I do always like to point out within that opinion, you'll see sections broken out for responsibilities of management, auditors' responsibilities. I do think those are just some important paragraphs, as they really do outline that management is responsible for the preparation and presentation of those financial statements. Really, our responsibility is to obtain reasonable assurance in all material respects. And so arriving at that unmodified, clean opinion essentially is kind of that reasonable assurance. One of the other reports that you're going to see that's kind of standalone from this ACFR is over the course of the last couple years, the town had received federal funds related to COVID, kind of those COVID federal funds. And over the course of the last couple of years, these were just recorded as unearned revenue until the town spent the dollars. In 2024, those dollars were spent, and because they triggered kind of what we call a single audit, they were over $750,000. we had to do an additional examination over those federal dollars. And really what it is it's just testing the allowability of those costs that were spent by the town. And so through all of those procedures that we did over the federal dollars and the allowability of those costs, again, in all material respects, the town complied with everything that was needed from a standpoint of the federal awards, or kind of those compliance requirements that are required to be followed for federal awards. So with that, I'll pause and open it up for any questions.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Again, appreciate your work on this, and I'll tell you that I always find this document to be extremely helpful. It goes into some more depth than our regular annual reports seem to, and I always learn something every year going through it, so thank you. Council, questions? I know Mayor Pro Tem has been working on some.
No. So Eric, as you go through this, as a council member, how do you test controls, and how do you keep it so that each year it's different, that our controls are, for your audit report, those controls don't become stale?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Went through the same question with the finance committee. Kind of for starters is, having experience with the town over the last couple of years, we're able to perform probably a more in-depth risk assessment than we would with a first-year client. And when it comes to controls, really that control understanding kind of determines our risk assessment for different audit areas. And then for kind of those specific audit areas, if we just wanted to pick one, call it cash and investments, it's always going to be a significant audit area. We'll perform control procedures every year over, the bank reconciliation process, the review process, and then kind of how we change that up from year to year is, I think in a lot of respects, entities know that we're going to look at the December bank recs and bank statements in making sure the numbers are materially correct. But for a control test, we might go back to February 2024 and look at bank recs, bank statements, 8-9 months prior to the end of the year to kind of verify or test whether those controls are also being applied throughout the course of the fiscal year. When it comes to salaries, payroll, kind of another large expense for the town, we might select a different individual over the course of 3, 4, 5 years and test their approved rate of pay, whether that rate of pay is being applied to their dollars that are hitting their bank account based on hours worked, hourly rates, etc. Because the town is involved in para, as part of that, we'll perform a kind of a recalculation to make sure that the proper percentages are being withheld from their paychecks each period. And then kind of as we discussed at the finance committee meeting, we're required under the standards to perform what we call is an unpredictability test. And so, we change it up over the course of the last 4 years. We've never done the same kind of control test or test with the town. We come up with something new every year as kind of just an unpredictable procedure that we'll perform to kind of get to that conclusion of the town's got controls, they're functioning correctly, so on and so forth.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I want to ask another question that we asked in the finance committee. And kind of looking at us versus our peers, and it's not necessarily looking at our financials, kind of looking at how we did in this audit. How would you compare us maybe to some of our peers of like similar maybe department size or population size? How do we kind of compare to our peers?
I mean, from a standpoint of, I think in a lot of maybe towns the size of Timnath, or other entities we work with, at the end of the day, you know, you might not have 4, 5, 6 individuals within the finance department or the accounting department. And so I think we kind of look at it from a perspective of, you know, I'll use the general phrase segregation of duties. Whether you've got 2, 3, 4 individuals within a specific department, is there a level of review between person A and person B and down the line? When you've got certain situations where maybe you only do have 1 or 2 people that are performing 95% of the finances or recording that information within your general ledger, we always emphasize the importance of council oversight, council review, taking those financial reports that are being provided during the board meetings and going through them, maybe not with a fine-tooth comb, but going through them and asking questions about, hey, what's this large disbursement or what's this large cash receipt, and kind of just think of ways that you as a town can just continue to strengthen that control process, for lack of a better way to say it. So nothing pops up, or you know, there's no headlines.
Awesome. Thank you.
Just one more question, and more for everybody else that wasn't at the finance committee meetings, but can you share a little bit, Eric, about your history with the town, specific to your interaction with our finance folks? Any discrepancies, any lack of cooperation or communication, or maybe just share as a whole as to what your experience is with Timnath versus potentially even other towns?
It's been fantastic. Lisa and Bonnie have been very transparent, very helpful. We appreciate all the work that they do for us to kind of make our lives easier from a standpoint of an audit. I know it's not easy to have me sending emails or making phone calls, or even when I was up there on site for a couple days, coming into your office and asking questions. Also appreciate I can't remember who I spoke to, but being able to call a council member and just have a quick 5-10 minute chat. You know, we do that as part of every audit, and just the willingness that everybody at the town has provided, or excuse me, the support that's been provided to kind of take this audit process from A to Z and meet all the required deadlines, has been fantastic.
Excellent. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I have a forward-looking question, and this may or may not be within your area of expertise or something you'd want to comment on. But coming up in 2029, the TDA, the Development Authority, will sunset. In winding down that entity, are there any risks that we might be looking at in terms of making sure we do that properly?
That might be more of a Lisa question. Without putting my foot in my mouth, I think the biggest component's just going to be related to the long-term debt that's outstanding. But again, I'm not 100% sure of kind of what that will look like out in 2029. So without deflecting that, I think that's probably more of a Lisa question.
Yeah, just to quickly address that, when we go to the budget work session on October 7th, you'll see 2029 and 2030 in those 5-year forecasts. So we'll go over what those impacts are at that time.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a question. So the audit, presuming we pass approval, which I assume we will, that gets filed with the state before the end of the month. As required. Will we also, since there was a special audit with regard to COVID dollars, will we also be filing something with the feds as well?
Yeah, that goes to the Federal Audit Trading House. So
Great.
yeah, it'll be filed as well at the same time that we
by
file
the end
this.
of the month.
Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Any other questions? Well, at this time, we would entertain a motion to approve the resolution approving the, accepting the 2024 audit performed by the Adams Group.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, discussion, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, so been over this report now twice, once in the Finance Committee and now reviewing it again for council. So I think first and foremost, I've been on the Finance Committee, I guess, gosh, almost 6 years now. And I just want to thank our finance department and our accounting department for all the work that you guys have done. It's come a long ways. I can remember poring over the first audit and thinking, wow, this is a lot of words. This is very hard to understand. And that comes with a finance and accounting background. So I really appreciate the report. I think if I don't know, if you guys ever go and look the stats that Bonnie talks about on the very last pages, like those KPIs that you go and look are just, that's really the big hitter for me. Like going and looking where we've come in 10 years and looking at our taxes and looking at all that. And I think we've done a great job as a town. I think the staff has done a great job. And I think continuing to get clean opinions coming back is a testament to our staff. It's a testament to the work they're doing. I know it was a tough year. They had the Tyler transition in the middle of this. So I think getting this clean opinion back, even with the COVID funds in the middle of it, getting that, and so getting that filed as well is a huge thing. So if you look at this report, like I said, we've come so far. So I'm hopeful we get this the GFOA. You know, I'm hopeful for staff, and I think we should celebrate these things. And I will absolutely support accepting the 2024 audit.
Councilmember Lake.
Nothing to add.
I'll echo, I think Luke does a phenomenal job of the kudos, but I'll echo those as well. I'm year and a half on the finance committee without the finance background, and I understand it, which is really hard to do for a guy like me. But the ability to field 7 or 8 questions or 7 or 8 different perspectives from the community without any really any anxiety, any difficulty, the communication that our staff does putting this together. They're not doing it just to get it done. They're doing it to win awards. I mean, that's huge to me. So they're doing it with the perfection at its finest. So kudos. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of time involved. So great job, guys.
Councilman Jenkins. Again, very, very appreciative. I learned a lot, as I always do. What struck me, Luke mentioned the KPI and stats is how much we've grown in terms of personnel. We talk about the para liability, but we also just talk about everything that comes with growing in personnel, not just projects. So it's really come a long way. All right. Let's see. We have a motion before us. All those in favor of the resolution accepting the 2024 audit performed by the Adams Group signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, nay? We have accepted the audit unanimously. We'll now move on to item 6B, resolution number 60, series 2025, a resolution approving the purchase and installation of signal detection equipment. Ms. Clavey-Me.
Good evening, council members. We are here to talk about the purchase of signal detection equipment and installation. Currently, the town has 10 traffic signals, one of which at County Road 5 in Kechter was recently installed in April. So we are talking about purchasing and replacing 9 signal detection equipment systems for the rest of our signals. Why, you ask, we need to do this? Currently, our traffic signal detectors are out of date and unreliable. Replacement parts are no longer available, so we have scrapped together the last ones and there are no more to find. This leads to inconsistent operations, missed calls, extra calls, which can make drivers frustrated, and rightfully so. Goals for this project: we are aligning with our transportation master plan. This has also been in our town strategic goals, and as well as been identified in our citizen survey as a priority for improved traffic signal operations. We would like reliable detection and calls. We want better coordination, and we want to be ready for our future. This is one small part of our ITS signal system upgrade project, which was identified in the 2025 CIP. And this was an early action item that was identified in that Mueller report of something that we really need in order to, to start off before we start before we start getting into the rest of it. This is something that can make a big difference right away. Just briefly, what is signal detection? Just in case you're wondering, those are those cameras that sit up top. There's a component that sits inside of our traffic signal cabinet, and then there's also a portion that sits up top. Detection is how how the traffic signal system knows that someone is sitting there. Again, these get influenced by snow, wind, ice, and any of our Colorado weather, so we do need something robust. The system that we are looking at does use radar and video in order to do that monitoring for us, to be able to detect those vehicles. It can see vehicles, bikes, and pedestrians, as we are a multimodal community. The calls can extend green time, coordinate our signals better, and prevents wasted time on our roads. Reliable detection is the foundation of any traffic signal operations. If you do not have good detection, you will never have a good system. Schedule. So overall, I stated that this was a part of our traffic signal upgrade plan. That plan was kicked off in April with Mueller Engineering. That plan is expected to finish in October with their draft report. As a portion of that, they have been issuing memos like the existing conditions memo, which have outlined some of our deficiencies and what we currently have, as well as the traffic signal detection chapter. That section recommended the Iteris Vantage Vector system, which will meet the needs of the community, which we can talk about a little bit more in a second. As far as schedule for the project, it would take about 3 to 4 weeks to order the equipment, and it takes about 2 weeks to install, so we could start seeing some improvements pretty quickly. Continuing with the rest of the funding as available with the rest of the CIP in 2026, we would be looking to replace controllers, build out a virtual central system, and replace traffic signal components with the rest of those upgrades into 2026. As far as fiber connection to Pulse, we've been partnering with our partners. That connection to our system will begin in Q4 of 2024. We've already been out there in the field marking off handholds and things like that. And as the system continues to build up to prospect, we'll extend into Q4. So as it, if we're already there, it's a lot easier. If we're not quite there yet, it's going to take a minute. All right. What we're looking to purchase is called the Iteris Vantage Next Vector System. It has been proven locally at our County Road 5 and Kechter Road with positive results. It is compatible with our existing controllers and cabinets. Also, it is compatible with our future options as well. Staff is already trained on this video and radar detection, lesser learning curve for us. It is also used widely by CDOT Region 4, so every single one of their traffic signal systems uses this system, and that was a very strong reason why we are following suit. CDOT Region 4, for those that do not know, is our immediate adjacent partner. It is future ready. It supports AT-SPM measures, which is essentially performance monitoring in the future after we get connected to fiber, adaptive signal control if we wish to go that way, and connected vehicles. Safety benefits. One of the cool things, if someone was to run a red light, which you should not do, it would it would show a red light, but it would hold the side road, which would lead to an immediate benefit, obviously, in safety crashes. So the driver still knows they ran the red, but they're not going to let the side road go until it's actually clear. So that's a cool feature of this. Procurement summary. This equipment is sole sourced by Mobotrex, which is the sole distributor in Colorado. The pricing was done using the CDOT cooperative agreement following our purchasing policy. There's the number up there. Installation, we plan to use Lighthouse Transportation Group, which is our current on-call signal maintenance contractor. They are the ones that go out and inspect every piece of our signal equipment yearly and give us reports, and are the ones installing every piece of this. We did a solicitation in 2024 with that group following our procurement policy. Financial equipment cost is about $257,000 for 9 traffic signals. Installation is about $77,000. Total project cost is within the 2025 CIP budget. Advantages, we are looking for reliable calls, reduced maintenance, less downtime, better coordination, monitoring readiness. It's going to be consistent with our regional systems. It supports staff with training, not having multiple systems. And it reflects, the most important, it obviously reflects the goals of the community and council to improve traffic in our corridor. Staff recommends approval. Questions?
Thank you. Who wants to start?
Yeah. So will the system be able to communicate with, say, CDOT signals on Harmony at I-25 or coordinate with Fort Collins if there's an issue somewhere along that traffic corridor?
The next, so the detection equipment is for this thing. The next portion of the traffic control center, that's the portion that starts to get to be fun, where we can start coordinating with our neighbors.
So the answer is yes, eventually.
Yes, eventually.
Yeah, great.
And this will build into it.
That's pretty important for regional traffic, so I really appreciate that. It's an important improvement both for the town of Timnath, but also for regional transportation. So, thank you.
So I know you mentioned the red light, how it'll kind of pause the green on the other side. Do you happen to know, is this also a method? I know Fort Collins is increasing some of their red light tickets, using some of that for radar and speeding and things like that. Is that something that this would also do or has the capability of doing?
This camera system is specific for detection. Usually detection systems are very specific. They're operating a very big role in our traffic signal system. There are other cameras that can interweave into that in order, if that was something we wish to look forward in. So it's definitely not precluded, but this one needs to do one job.
Okay.
And it needs to do it very well.
Perfect, thank you.
Longevity, duration, and future planning, right? I think you mentioned a couple points where this will be adaptable in our future growth, but what can we expect as far as longevity of this setup?
They give you about like the 10 to 15 years, but then they also keep going. So we will use this for as long as we can. That makes sense. And look for opportunities to continue to upgrade. The people that you talk with do say that they never die forever. Our current system, some of which are that Iteris systems, have been out in the field for about 15 years already. So.
And curious, and we might not have the exact answer, but how many over the next 5 to 10 years in our traffic master plan, how many more traffic lights will we be adding throughout town?
Well, if it's up to Justin, and we probably do roundabouts everywhere, but there is at least one probably within the next year or two. So potentially like 2 or 3 would be my guess.
So no concerns on equipment being available, year or two, whatever it is in the future that is compatible with this?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
I want to add on to Councilmember Holtz. You said LiDAR was also a promising alternative in your packet here. Mm-hmm. Can you explain and are we locking ourselves in here with this camera versus LiDAR? Like, how do you see that going? And
so each traffic signal could technically be different. However, that being said, then you're, asking your staff to, learn multiple systems and, train on multiple systems. LiDAR was just starting to be used in CDOT Region 1, and Mueller got really excited about it, and so we did do some research into it. It is promising, but it is not proven quite yet as far as, it's a little bit more advanced. I don't think we would necessarily be locking ourselves into anything. And if there was a reason or, large benefits or future grant opportunities, there can always be potential to, to make changes or to, as we build new signals online, try out different things. But there is a strong benefit for us to maintain a consistency as well, as we are a small community with limited maintenance resources.
And just a question about the budget. We've got 334. There's just no contingency in there like we've seen in other projects. So I'm assuming we're pretty locked in on the 334 and we're comfortable with that.
Yeah, for other projects, usually like a contractor, we're working with a contractor who's maintaining a lot of subs. In this case, it's kind of us. We're purchasing the equipment, and then we have a contract with our installation group. So I think we're pretty good on pricing. The overall contract budget does have about $50,000 remaining left for this year.
Okay, perfect. And so we talked about this being used at County Road 5 and Hector. What's the benefit? What have you guys seen? Like can you walk me through that? What have you got? I guess I just don't understand. Explain it to somebody like I'm 5, maybe what you're seeing, that the difference here between Harmony and Hector and why we should do this as opposed to what we're seeing at Harmony and how you guys use it as staff or
Sure.
what the benefits are.
So currently the systems on Harmony, for example, don't always see calls. And part of that is because it's outdated and we don't have replacement parts. So some of what we get is like due to the sun glare or snow, wind, and ice. If you've ever driven down the road and noticed like it pulls a left turn but no one's in the lane, you're like, well, why did it do that? Well, that's because our detection isn't so great right now. It's not ever going to do anything that's unsafe, but it is potentially going to waste a little bit of your time. County Road 5 and Hector is reliably making all of those calls. We did have one citizen call in about some issues where they were not getting picked up, and the vendor was able to walk us through how to fix that pretty immediately within the program. There was a lot of flexibility within the algorithm. It counts bikes, it counts cars, it can count people, although there's not very many over there, unless it's probably me. It has a lot of cool features. The advanced detection is one of the things from a safety side that I really like to see. The red light running, especially with T-bone collisions, is a huge serious injury and fatality risk because at the speeds that you're traveling with 45 miles an hour, it detects you that far out. Knows what speed you're going, and then it knows if you're going to clear the intersection because it knows the timing. And that's a really cool and critical feature to reduce serious injuries and fatalities on our roads that I do feel that could apply very well on Harmony. Now, we don't want to reward that good behavior by giving them a green. We want them to know they ran it, and then maybe a chief in the back can, tell them also in another way that they did the wrong thing. In the future, it can also give us counts. It can give us reports. It can let us know how many cars we're seeing through those intersections. And there's a lot of cool performance measures that we'll be able to see as we get connected to fiber as well. So as we build out the rest of the traffic control system, this is a very small component, small but critical component. But I think we'll be able to start seeing some better performance measures. We'll be able to start reporting on like how long it's taking us to get through Harmony, if our coordination is actually working, and be able to make some of those tweaks in the future.
Can you go back to the map then? Sorry, I just
Sure.
have a question here. So you talk a lot about like pedestrian, right? Unless, there's not a lot of pedestrians necessarily, but some of these lights are going to be related to the trail now that's coming through, or some crossing over necessarily. So what kind of benefits will bicyclists or pedestrians see with this system?
So pedestrians and bicyclists. So some of this is going to feed into some of the other components that we'll be purchasing next year. So this is a component. So this system will be able to detect them very well. We can draw all of these detection zones exactly where they're standing. It's been proven to work. It can count. It can see the bikes. Bikes have a slower start time, so sometimes you can adjust your timing in the future. When we buy our new controllers, that will be a portion of that, having that flexibility to adjust start times and stuff like that for bikes in order to give them the time that they also need to get through.
So it'll pick them up better. Is what you're
Yes.
saying. This won't necessarily change anything for pedestrians or bikes at this point. It'll be.
It will change stuff right now for pedestrians and bikes, not as much for the timing, but we will actually be able to see them and get them moving. So if there's somebody in the bike lane, we will be able to see them a lot better and actually make sure that it calls a green for them. They should be able to go to.
Okay, great. Okay.
Can I ask you a quick question with that?
Go.
When you say we, the system is doing it. There's not somebody monitoring, sitting behind the scenes, monitoring every light, saying there's a bike and hitting a button, correct? Like it's automatic?
Yes.
Okay. Major.
That would be a terrible job.
I would be
If that's how they're doing it, we would need to find a new system.
That's my questions. Thank you.
Are you able to put an approximate number in terms of detections and calls that our current system is failing us on? Is that a 10% failure rate or a 5% failure rate?
I cannot. The new system, however, will be able to tell me that answer, but it won't be a big number anymore. But then when it does actually give me those error messages, we'll actually be able to go out and figure out why. But it's a lot. And we'll be able to do something about it. The new system, the old system can't tell me, but based on citizen feedback and our experiences, it's not great.
Yeah, that's the only way right now is if a citizen let us know about it. So that's why it's hard to measure. So.
All right. Council, any other questions? Is there a motion to approve a resolution approving the purchase and installation of signal detection equipment?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Councilman?
Yeah, I think this is absolutely critical for safety, for regional transportation. The fact that we will be able to collect detailed data about bicycles, cars, pedestrians, and actually respond to that data in a rapid manner, and connecting it to the internet, or connecting it to fiber, not necessarily the internet, but our intranet, I think is really really critical with the amount of traffic that we're serving today, but also with the proposed growth with Ladera growing, more cars coming down Harmony, et cetera. I think this is absolutely essential for the growth of the town. So I will be supporting it.
Councilman Lake?
I will also be supporting this, and I think it's a great first step to future information as well. Being able to collect that data, I think, will be very telling, and we'll see how we can use it in other ways in that 10, 15 plus year time frame.
Councilman Holt? Mayor Pro Tem Wagner?
Yeah, I appreciate the presentation and answering the questions. It just amazes me that we just get so far outdated so quickly, especially just all the work that we've done on Harmony. But I do want to make data-driven decisions, so I will be supporting this measure, or this purchase.
I also am in full support. Traffic and safety issues always score very high in terms of community concern. We have multiple CIP projects that are related to this. This is part of that. If we don't do this, the things we have slated for next year all of a sudden don't make sense. So it makes sense to me. All those in favor of the resolution approving the purchase and installation of the signal detection equipment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, nay? All right, it passes 5-0. Thank you. We'll move on to item 6C, which is first reading and setting a public hearing on October 14th, 2025 at 6 p.m. for ordinance number 16, series 2025, an ordinance approving the Timnath Landing Zone Map Amendment number 1. Again, this is a first reading, so we will get a brief presentation, and those that wish to provide comment on this are invited to the public hearing, assuming we set it. So with that, Mr. Kemper.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This application seeks to amend the Timnath Landing zoning map boundaries for portions of the R2, R3, and CMU zone districts established in the southeast quadrant of the Timnath Landing subdivision. The request was prompted by changing conditions within the Timnath Landing subdivision that have occurred from the original zoning boundaries, which was adopted in 2015. And it is also used to correct a zoning boundary conflict resolving instances of split zoning. As you mentioned, following tonight's first reading, the Town Council will conduct a public hearing on October 14th, at which time you may approve the amendment, approve it with modifications based on specific findings, or deny it. So what you're seeing on the screen, the existing zoning boundary on the left, to the right, The darker green hatch is what would be representing that change in the boundary, again, to align or conform with development within the Timnath Landing subdivision. With that, I move to recommend approval of the first reading, amending the Timnath Landing zoning map, setting the second reading and public hearing on Tuesday, October 14th, 2025 at 6 p.m. And if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Kemper. Council understanding that we'll have a full hearing on this. Are there any urgent questions? All right. Seeing none there, then is there a motion to approve the first reading to amend the Timnath Landing zoning map and to set second reading and public hearing for Tuesday, October 14th, 2025 at 6 p.m.?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, nay? Very good. Then we will be back for public hearing on Tuesday, October 14th at 6 p.m. Moving on now to item 6D, first reading and setting a public hearing on that same date, October 14th, 2025 at 6 p.m. for ordinance number 17, series 2025, an ordinance amending the municipal code to clarify penalties for land use code violations. Director Robinson.
Mayor, council members, want to bring this first reading to your attention. This is to clarify some ordinance changes with our municipal code to align with the land use code. So what we're trying to do is establish land use violations that are currently in the land use code so that they're reflected in our municipal code. I will be following up with a subsequent amendment for our land use code to kind of reverse engineer some of those corrections too. So just generally looking at some land use violations on the left, talking about land disturbing activities, non-conforming structures, intensity of use, activities inconsistent with a permit, activities inconsistent with the conditions of approval. So those currently right now we don't have a mechanism to enforce because it's not in our municipal code. The ordinance that is included does clarify that these are separate violations for each day and every day. Does give the authority for the town to enforce these, does provide a scope or range of penalties that are identified, and then it also helps clarify any application fees. So with that, I do have some feedback from our planning commission. We did take this for their consideration because this will involve a land use code amendment and it does pertain to land use code provisions. So we got their recommendation, a 3-to-1 positive recommendation. One commissioner was concerned about the definition of weeds in our municipal code. We did review that and found it to be consistent with the state definition of invasive weeds. And there was some concern about overreach from enforcement practices. And again, we kind of explained the reasoning behind that. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. We have the recommended motion up there for your consideration.
All right. Council, any questions? Very well. At this time, is there a motion to approve on first reading to amend the municipal code to clarify penalties for land use codes violations and to set the second reading and public hearing for Tuesday, October 14th, 2025 at 6 p.m.?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, nay? Very well. We will be back for public hearing on Tuesday, October 14th at 6 p.m. Thank you, Director Robinson. All right, we'll move on to our final agenda item, which is a public hearing this evening. We will, after I call the matter, have a staff presentation followed by an applicant presentation. At that point, we will ask any members of the public who wish to comment to do so. After public comment, council can ask staff or the applicant questions, and we'll proceed with the motion at that time. So with that, I'll call resolution number 61, series 2025, a resolution approving the Ladera South subdivision preliminary plat. Mr. Jones.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Troy Jones with the Planning Department, as you know, and this item is the Ladera South Subdivision Preliminary Plat. Let me just kind of go through the PowerPoint show here. Is it? The subject area is south of the Ladera second filing, which is the lots that are currently platted. The area in the shaded in blue is the subject area of the preliminary plat, which is the remainder of the Ladera subdivision. I'm sure where I gotta point this. What's it doing? Ah, there we go. Did it? I think it jumped. Oh, no, it goes back. Okay, the process is a major subdivision. So the major subdivision is kind of divided into several pieces. We've already done the sketch plan, which you guys approved on February 25th of this year. And this is the next step, the preliminary plat for the Ladera South site. And then we will be proceeding after this approval to the final plat, which is the third step in the major subdivision process. If you look at the hearing process table in the table 2.1 in the land use code, it goes through subdivisions, and it requires a public hearing from both Planning Commission and the Town Council. The Planning Commission provides the recommendation, and the Town Council makes the final approval. The site was properly noticed with signage and with notification in the Colorado and plus the appropriate mailing of the property owners within 500 feet. There it goes. Just going through, I wanted to kind of compare, whoops. We lost it, okay. I wanted to compare the preliminary plat review criteria versus final plat review criteria. We are at the preliminary plat stage. There's 6 criteria under consideration. And the reason that I'm showing the final plat criteria is to kind of distinguish what level of detail we look at and what level of detail we'll be getting to. Whoops, it's got a mind of its own here. So basically the preliminary plat criteria, I'll just run through these real quick. The first criteria, the preliminary plat represents a functional system of land use that's consistent with the rationale and criteria set forth in the land use code and the comprehensive plan. Wanted to point out the rationale and criteria of the land use code is, what we review now. What we will get to later is in the second of the final plat criteria is that the development code will the development will substantially comply with the code. So we do a more detailed review of the code criteria, and we have a lot more detail to look at when we get to the final plat. So right now we're just looking at as far as the code goes, the rationale and the criteria set forth in the code. And also we also checked that it's consistent with the sketch plan and that it incorporates the Planning Commission's recommendations, that the land use mix conforms to the zoning and the future land use map of the comprehensive plan. And I'll get into a slide that kind of shows how we do that. With this, the utility and transportation design is adequate given the capacity of those systems, that the negative impacts on neighboring property owners have been satisfactorily mitigated, and that there is a need or desirability in the community for the development to achieve a balance of land use. And staff finds that all of these preliminary plat criteria have been satisfied. Just to go into the zoning map and the future land use map, which is an element of the comprehensive plan. The property zoned regional commercial with a PD overlay. The proposed preliminary plat is consistent with that. Additionally, on the comprehensive plan, the site is shown as employment / regional commercial, and the zoning and the proposed preliminary plat is consistent with that as well. The existing sketch plan, as I said at the beginning, was approved in February of this year, and it basically showed 10 planning areas, and it kind of called out the acreage and the uses of those planning areas. And so this is consistent with that. And there was basically within those 10, there's 6 business and commercial planning areas. There's 2 open space planning areas, and then 1 business, commercial, multifamily, and retail planning area, and then 1 final just multifamily residential planning area. So with that, the preliminary plat, you can see how it kind of fits into the other filings of Ladera. Preliminary plat that's in front of you is shaded in the tan color. There is a little portion of the 3rd filing that's being replatted that this sort of describes in this diagram. The lots 4 and 5 of the 3rd filing are kind of being incorporated in the larger lots 1 and 2 of this preliminary plat filing. So this request is for 9 lots, 2 outlots, and 4 tracks. So the outlots, are the 2 open space areas that were shown on that sketch plan. The 9 lots, you can kind of see there's in 2 different pods. The lots 1, 2, and 3 are kind of up there south of what was labeled as the Ladera 3rd filing, and then the lots 4 through 9 are kind of down in the lower right-hand corner, and then the 4 tracks are kind of these larger areas kind of in the middle of the plat, and those are intended as tracks for future development. They'll come back in with subdivisions for those areas as soon as they know what they want to do there. But right now, they're kind of reserving those areas for the future phases. Particularly as you get further south, they're still doing active gravel mining, and so some of those phases down towards the southwest in the property where the 2nd open space area is intended to be is kind of a ways off. So that that will be tackled with a site plan review on that southern open space. But currently, as part of this, we have the northern open space, which is having kind of the detailed landscaping and final site design of the open space as part of this preliminary and subsequently final plat level of detail. And like I said, on the southern open space, they will have to go through a site plan review for that one later on. That's why we're not seeing that level of detail right now on the southern one. There is one condition that's being proposed, and it's, I think, just a simple catchphrase just to add clarity. Right now, what I'm showing up there on the diagram is the landscape plan for this this northern open space, and the preliminary plat. Like I said, when we are comparing the preliminary plat review criteria and the final plat review criteria, the preliminary plat doesn't get into like full compliance with the details of the land use code. That's a final plat criteria. But I just wanted to make it clear, because we've been reviewing this landscape plan, that we're not saying by approving this landscape plan that what they've submitted so far is in full compliance. We're still having comments back and forth, and I think we're getting to where we're getting close to a resolution on what it's going to take for this landscape plan at final plat review to comply with the code. But the condition is basically, well, I'll get to the wording of the condition, but it basically refers to this code section that requires that an open space be appropriate to the context and character of the site and the intensity of the proposed development as determined by the town planner. So at this point, what they're showing us isn't quite there, but it doesn't need to be quite there at the preliminary, and so that condition just kind of clarifies that will be addressed at final. So the Planning Commission did recommend approval with the same two conditions by a vote of 4-0. And the recommended motion is up there on the screen. And like I had mentioned, the first condition is referring back to that whole landscape plan that I showed, and the code section that I quoted. And then the second one is just our standard condition that we typically use that gives staff the ability to work through the minor non-substantive modifications during the final plat. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to the applicant for their presentation.
Good evening. No, and actually, I think you turned it off. I think we left it on before. There you go.
There we go. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Kirsten Starman with Connell LLC and the Ladera Development Team. 7785 Highland Meadows Parkway, Fort Collins, Colorado 80528. I appreciate the opportunity to kick off our presentation about the Ladera South subdivision.
Yeah, we're having technical difficulties with the flash drive.
Oh, it's the same presentation we did for Planning Commission.
Right, which was on this flash drive before. I might have to email it to Jaden, and then I can forward.
So it's a different.
The flash drive was corrupted.
Yours. Okay. I thought you were talking about the one I brought. Sorry.
No.
Oh, okay.
All right,
We do
so
have your pictures
Oh.
when you're ready for them.
so there was the one from last time is the one they want to speak, and then the pictures were, the two slides were a backup that they wanted to have, depending on where the conversation went.
Gotcha. Okay.
So let me see if I can open this and email it to you. Does it say it's corrupt on mine? That is. So I can forward you well, let's see, no, the email. Well, the email from Planning Commission, I can forward you.
Yeah.
That they sent me. Let's see. Sorry about the technical difficulties here. Let's see. Kirsten Starman, and this would have been last week. Let's see. I'm sorry, what?
Steve might have sent it.
Steve might have sent the presentation. Let's see.
It came from Steve Weens.
Right. Steve. That would have been. Hybrid presentation. Great. This is 9. It would have been. Let's see if I've saved it anywhere else. I don't see that. Let's see.
While we work through this, why don't we take a 5-minute recess?
Okay. PDF, let's see. Just double check here. On that drive, I think you need to format that. I just had it on one. You got it emailed right now? Spot on. Spot on. So far,
So we got to go to Guanella Pass.
Or that.
It's between Georgetown and Bailey. Well, a little west of Bailey.
A little off-roading?
No, it's a paved road, but it's like one of the best roads to see the changing leaf colors.
I did the
their South presentation.
back way into Aspen when I went up there in July.
Over Independence Pass. Yeah, Independence Pass is pretty awesome.
Unbelievable. I could only imagine right now what that looks like.
Yeah. Well, it's probably closed right now because of the snow.
Okay,
'Cause they
I've
don't
got it
plow.
from the one from Steve on 9:15. Okay, I'm gonna forward that to Jaden. So I found it, the email.
Okay.
So do I just email it to you or?
Yeah, just email it to me.
Okay. All right. There it is.
Are we up and running?
Yes, we found it and it is now running, so.
Very good.
Hi again.
Welcome back.
All right. As Troy mentioned earlier, Ladera South subdivision is subdividing all of the remaining unplatted land within Ladera, creating the 9 lots CC in red, totaling 37 acres, and the 4 tracts in blue, and then the 2 open space areas. The tracts will be further subdivided with future platting efforts, and the outlots that total about 74 acres will remain permanent private open space. We're really excited about the vision of the North Reservoir open space system, and this slide really highlights that vision. This area totals a little over 35 acres, almost all of which is within the floodplain. 11 of those acres are the pond itself. So technically it's made up of tracks A and B of the Ladera subdivision filing number 2 and the proposed outlot A of Ladera South sub, but aesthetically, if you've been out there, it's currently home to a decent stand of native grasses and wildflowers, a ton of birds and other wildlife. We've heard reports, I've seen huge turkeys out there. I've heard reports of a couple bobcats. So it's really why we believe that the amenities that are being proposed are a great fit. The amenities include a 10-foot wide multi-use concrete trail system that's about a mile. It has interpretive signage that highlights and informs the visitors about Colorado prairie native landscapes and the migratory birds that call the area home. At various locations along the trail, there are picnic tables and benches. We have pet waste stations located at all of the entrances to the open space. And while the primary purpose of that decomposed granite trail is a maintenance road for that working reservoir, we welcome it being used as an additional walking trail per the town's request. Floodplain limitations preclude the ability to install permanent structures or make any real adjustments to the certified grade. So therefore, we feel that the improvements being proposed in this North Reservoir open space area are appropriate to the context and character of the site and the intensity of the proposed development. This slide details the site amenities that are being proposed, the picnic tables, the pet waste stations, the benches. You'll also note that we have a rendering of a proposed entry feature at the terminus of Sweatsville Zoo Road. Includes a stone seat wall, landscaping, and some signage. And we think it would make a good place to sit and read a book or have a snack while you're getting your oil changed or your husband's getting their hair cut or something. This slide really details the site. We feel the North Reservoir open space area is sufficiently programmed. I think this slide helps show that. We have 8 places to sit and picnic and relax along a trail that is a little less than 1 mile. Average person would not walk more than a minute and a half without an opportunity to sit down. And the decomposed granite trail is about a half a mile around. All right. I'd like to close with the approved Ladera South sketch plan to highlight that we are in alignment with what was presented and approved for the North Reservoir open space area. Furthermore, our intent is, and has always been, for the south open space area to be more active. It's more appropriate location for creating those kind of public gathering places, really to highlight the views of the lakes and the mountains, and we'll have ample parking available from the adjacent retailers and restaurants. So thanks again, and I'm going to turn it over to Will.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Councilman. So I'm William Welch. I'm the Infrastructure Project Manager for the Ladera project. I have spoken to you several times. We think there needs to be some more conversation about the programming in the North Open Space. We've been working with staff for many months. We argue and fight like brothers. We have a really good time, but we're not making some good progress, we think. Staff wants or believes there should be more intense development in this natural area, and believe it or not, we think it should be less. So as Kirsten said, that open space is 30 of 240 acres. So it's a big chunk of property. On the overall Ladera development, we end up with almost 110 acres of open space in natural areas. And so we think that the highest and best use for this piece of property is much more as a natural area as opposed to active recreation. We think this is a passive recreation area. And one of the things I'd like to show is so will you bring up the floodplain map, please, Troy?
Yeah, if the one that, the slide he's not talking about it is back on, there is a floodplain line on, that, he's got a different diagram that he's referring to.
So while they find this, so this entire open space is not only in the 100-year and 500-year floodplain, it is the 100-year and 500-year floodway. And so we are very concerned about development in that area. We have agreed to the plan that Kirsten showed that has more development than we think is wise, and but we've accepted it and we think that that's okay. I guess one other piece of information I need to give you is several years ago, I was the infrastructure program manager for the city of Fort Collins on the Woodward development. Included in that project was the Poudre Trail from LeMay Avenue over to Linton Street. You know, about 30 days after we completed that project, the Poudre River left its banks, flooded it out, and what we saw there, which was really amazing, is all of the native materials and native plant materials looked a little worse after the flood, but it was actually better for them. All the man-made stuff, the trails, ended up in a pile at the end of it, and we spent millions of dollars having to replace all those trails, and we ended up wrecking a lot of the then established native materials in order to get construction equipment and people back in there to fix it. One of the things that this development plan will require us to do at each one of those bench locations, we are going to be driving a stake, chaining that stuff to the ground, and so that if there is a flood and it washes away, it will not jam up the floodplain. Now, what that essentially means is that everything in there is sacrificial, because in the floodplain, if you looked at the furniture and things, it can't stand up to a flood like that. We had rocks, 2-ton rocks moved hundreds of feet in the flood. And so we're very concerned about this. We've been working with staff. They feel like it is currently inadequately programmed, and they think that there's more stuff that should be put in there. And so, you know, with that context, we believe that what's there is probably adequate. Were you able to find you can't, okay. Well, like I say, it's the whole.
Jaden, I just emailed you that as well. I think that was also on this corrupt file or this corrupt thumb drive, but I found the email from earlier this week just now. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, so bring up the bottom one, please. Okay, so this is the Larimer County floodplain map, and that I printed 2 days ago. So you can see that this entire area is in the floodway. What we want to do with this space is we have put together a proposal to do native vegetation, some trees, forbs, bushes, and a lot of native grasses that would restore this area to its historic type condition. It's been farmed for 100 years. What we're proposing is to put in multiple wild seeds and materials and really take it back to its native state. This is a great location for that because if you look, you have the reservoir on the southwest, you've got a north oxbow of the river, and you've got an east oxbow of the river. So this is the corridor where wildlife is going to come through and they're going to want to be there. And that is the vision that we have for this piece of property. What we are proposing is consistent with the FEMA recommendations. It is in general conformance with CPW recommendations and the floodplain manager's recommendations, that there be limited development in there. What we're proposing again is an extensive multi-year revegetation process. Because the Ladera gestation period is so long, we're going to be there for a long time. And what we're proposing is to do this native seed stand. It is a low water use, low fertilizer, low maintenance once it's established. We believe that it may take 3 to 5 years in order to get it established and do the maintenance. It is highly intensive maintenance that we are committing to, and using the best science that we can find. We've got several people in mind to help us do that. The South Reservoir, as Kirsten said, is where we are putting the public spaces, where we think the active recreation, the active people ought to be, is down there, and keep them out of this place where the turkeys and the bobcats and the birds are. When I was at CSU, there were pheasants all over this piece of property. So we have a problem with the condition as it is, and so we would like to add a couple of things into the motion. One of them is the code says that on privately held open space, that's a determination to be made by the council. And I don't think that determination's ever been officially made. We've been understanding for all the years we've been under development that was the case. Ladera and the Ladera Business Improvement District are prepared to own and operate this facility. But one of the things that we would like added into the motion is that the north open space is a privately held open space as defined by section 11.2 of the definitions and will ultimately be held by the Ladera Business Improvement District. Another thing that we would like, and the section that says that is section E of 5763, where it says ownership and maintenance of open space. Ownership and maintenance of public open space shall be determined by the town council on a case-by-case basis during review. The next item that we would like the council to consider including in the motion is that the north open space is a natural area as defined by 11.2 definitions in the code. Again, that is much more focused on it being a passive recreation, lower intensity human input than just the other 11 definitions of open spaces. And with that, I am done, and we are happy to answer your questions about any part of this discussion.
All right, before we move to council questions, this is slated for a public hearing. Don't believe anyone has signed up, but I would ask now if there's anyone present that would like to provide comment on this preliminary plat. All right, see no one, so we will move on now to council questions. Who'd like to start?
Actually, can I make a clarification? I do not believe that this would be a private, I don't understand how something owned by a business improvement district is a private improvement. Looking at the land use code, there is no definition of privately held.
If you go to open space, privately held in the definitions.
Okay, it's defined as open space owned and maintained by a private entity such as a property owners association. As a legal matter, a business improvement district is not a private entity.
it's a quasi-governmental because it's taxing, right?
Well, it's a quasi-municipal corporation, but it's actually a governmental corporation.
Right.
It is it's an improvement district established by law. Every year, this council approves the operating plan for the business improvement district and the budget for the business improvement district, and it is not a private entity.
So, let me ask this question. It feels to me like this cake is not baked, and wondering if we don't put it back in the oven for a while. So, is there detriment to not moving forward on this tonight?
Is it worth having some discussion about this from the council before if it is put back in the oven?
Just a reminder from the staff's recommendation, the motion is to say this issue as referenced in the review criteria for final plats would be a final plat level of review. I just wanted to put that condition in there so there was no confusion as to whether or not this preliminary approved the level of detail of their landscape plan as shown or not. And so to say it needs to go back in the oven, that is consistent with my recommended motion to say that this is a final plat compliance issue, as opposed to the preliminary that's before you tonight.
What's the applicant's take on the urgency of this?
Part of the reason that we brought this up tonight is we have several users that are looking to come in early next year. We have talked to staff about a schedule to get the final plat done. We have a submittal on the 15th of October that's going to come in with final plat. And we have talked about and gone around the tree on this subject for, again, we've worked hard, but we have not been able to get together on what the highest and best use for this piece of property is. We feel that it should be lower human intensity, and they feel like it should be higher.
All right, well, at this point, there's not a pending motion to table, so I'll ask who has questions.
Yeah. So from staff's perspective, what's your opinion about the lower human impact and higher natural space, higher potential wildlife use of this area? I know some of the arguments before Ladera was even annexed from citizens had to do with the impact on wildlife in the area, the fact that the Poudre River is so close to this property, the fact that in harsh winters the Poudre River is a critical water resource for migrating birds as well as other wildlife in the riparian habitat. And I don't know, to my mind, the fact that a developer actually wants to enhance part of a development for wildlife seems like a really cool idea to me. And we do have lots of other open space that does have much higher impact. So, and there are still trails through here so people can walk through it and walk their dogs, bike, without turning it into a human-centered park. So, personally, I'm sort of in favor of the natural landscaping and more wildlife-centered use of the area, but that's me. So,
yeah, it is a delicate balance because we're right between, like you say, the Poudre River, but we're also, this is the open space that, until the southern open space is developed, which, is, nobody knows, but it's currently a gravel operation. So it's going to be a number of years, even if, the development goes rapidly. I don't know if 10 or more, 10 or 15 years, who knows? It's really a market-driven thing. So this is the open space that will serve Ladera until the southern piece is developed. And so you look at the code section that I quoted, and it keeps going back to, well, let me just read it again. It says the uses designated within the open space shall be appropriate to the context and character of the site and the intensity of the proposed development as determined by the town planner. So Scott and I and Logan have been having quite a few conversations internally. What is the town planner or the staff together kind of, how do we read what the appropriate context and character of the site and the, in relation to the intensity of their development mean? It's got the trails, but it's also for humans, but it's also got the natural prairie grass that they're proposing. We think the natural prairie grass is a great idea, as opposed to, if it was irrigated, turf and ball fields and that sort of thing. We're not asking for that. So there is quite a bit of, natural feature, the prairie grass, that we agree is a great idea in this location. And that's consistent with, the kinds of wildlife like the turkeys and the pheasants and that sort of thing, to cohabitate, this area. This is not the riparian area of the river, meaning like where all of the growth that's associated with the cottonwoods and the dense shrubs and trees that are right along the riverbank. This is a little bit away from that, and thus this is kind of the prairie next to the riparian area. So we're, from a staff level, we're trying to get a balance between, the context of the Ladera regional commercial development and the open space that serves those users, as part of the development amenities, versus the wildlife use. And we think the prairie grass is a great example, or a great amenity that would be good for the natural part. But when we look at the context of the Ladera regional commercial, it just seems like a trail. You got 3 benches, you've got 3 picnic tables, you've got that terminus feature at the end of Sweatsville Zoo Road, and then that's, from a man-made human interaction standpoint, that's about it. And we're just saying, from the context of this regional development and what the needs would be of the human users of that, they just need to provide a little bit more. And we're not saying it has to be something that wouldn't be allowed from a FEMA standpoint. And we've been talking a lot with Earl, and and he's the floodplain administrator as well as this the town engineer, of what would and wouldn't be allowed within that. And we certainly wouldn't.
Let me ask a question.
Yeah.
Have you consulted with a wildlife biologist about in helping you make the determinations? Because I think part of the intent here is to create an area that is welcoming not only to humans passing through it and using the space, but also welcoming to wildlife. And so the danger is, if you over enhance it and have too much traffic, you're not going to have any wildlife. You might have prairie grasses, but you're going to scare the animals away. So I just wonder if you've consulted with a wildlife biologist about the plans.
We haven't,
Yeah.
you know, that wasn't part of their application materials that was required, but then we haven't, no.
Can I jump in real quick, Mayor?
Please.
So, forgetting about the detail, because that's not really what we're supposed to be voting on tonight. Is that correct? We're looking at the details will be in that final
In the
plat.
Right.
So,
Whether there's enough amenities or not, yeah.
so right now, you're saying as everything has been presented, minus some of that detail that can be worked out before the final, that everything else in the application meets the criteria in order to approve this. Is that correct?
Exactly, for the preliminary plat
Okay,
criteria.
thank you.
Right.
And just to be clear, I'm not saying that I want to hold up the preliminary plat at all. I'm in favor of the preliminary plat and moving the project forward. I just want to make sure. I mean, once you make the determination and you do whatever enhancements are going to be done there, it's kind of done.
I think Scott wants to chime in.
Yeah, so just jump to the chase here. We've had a lot of discussions with the developer and a lot of conversations, and I think the concept that staff is over-programming this is probably an overstatement, to be honest. We've talked about very passive uses on this site, talked about access to the water. These are things that are very common that we see
Sure.
along the Poudre River Trail. There's former augmentation ponds, and I understand their concerns, and we've listened to that, trying to keep those options on the table. We've talked about access points to the site. Currently, there's very limited access points to the site.
Mhm.
Are there other locations that we could provide some access to the site? These are the type of things we're talking about.
Got it.
We've talked about Frisbee golf and some other things. Again, not really a high intense use, but fairly passive. Again, they've had some concerns about the intensity. Talked about signage. They've showed some signage.
Yeah,
so-
I mean, Frisbee
so-
golf
please-
sounds more
please let
like
me
a
finish,
park
Councilmember
amenity
Rudd.
rather than an open space.
I'm trying to provide some context to our conversation.
Got it.
So we've had a lot of dialogue about what other enhancements can make this a little bit more of an amenity than maybe a very passive site where there isn't a lot going on. We've suggested about birds of prey towers to encourage nesting. So we've had a lot of dialogue, and I think that's stuff that we can continue to work on at
Sure.
the final plat stage.
Yeah.
So again, I think the differences are pretty minor in what we're looking at, and I think that's the challenge of what works in this location, given the constraints with the floodway, floodplain, habitat restoration versus human interaction. We've all seen many wildlife activities along the Poudre Trail, so I don't see how this is any different with interaction with wildlife there. So I think that's just where we're coming from, providing feedback to the petitioner. We're respectful of their timeline and working these details out in the final plan. I think we can achieve that.
All right. Karen, I feel like you've been doing some research and thinking. Do you have anything that needs to be shared, or?
So, I guess I'm a little unclear about what changed to the condition of approval the applicant was asking for, other than asking you to find that it's open space and that it's a privately owned open space. I look at the definitions and seems pretty clear to me that if it's owned by a governmental entity, it's not a privately owned open space. So in terms of what the recommended condition is from staff, it's just a recommendation that the final plat needs to meet the criteria that's set forth in the land use code. It does not say how it has to meet it. It does not have any detail about what the additions would be. And then it gives the staff the opportunity to continue to talk to the applicant about that. This has been a review comment the entire way through the preliminary plat, and it just is something that's unresolved that would be resolved at final plat. There may be other comments that staff will have about the land use plan and about other code requirements. This is not an exclusive, the one where this is our only comment that they're going to have, but this was significant enough that they just wanted to make it clear to the applicant that this is something they're going to have to continue to work through when they get to final plat.
First one question, from a process perspective, is the final plat coming back to us, or does that stay with staff?
The way the code is currently written, the final plats are a town council decision.
Okay. So this will be back before us regardless, correct? Okay. And then, I guess, Carolyn, from your perspective, this condition that's being added to me essentially just reiterates what's already in the code. I don't really view it as adding an additional requirement. Am I missing something?
That's correct. If this were not a specific condition of approval, they would still be required to meet that as a code requirement when they got to final plat.
Okay. All right, so I would like to invite folks who have questions about this specific area and hash that out. And then I still think we need to back up and look at the rest of the proposal as well. So while we're on this topic, who has questions about this particular area?
One question I had, and again, I was trying to write it down as quick as possible as you were saying it, but wanting to change something in section E about ownership and maintenance and have that turned over versus having council. What were you wanting done there?
The town has said they do not want this dedicated to the town, that this is to be retained by the developer. So, and the way that I read the code is it defines dedicated to Fort Compton or to Lamar County, to Timnath. Those are the public users, and it pretty much defaults everybody else is private, is the way I read it. Now, I am not the attorney, but anyway, this discussion has been an ongoing one over the 4 years of Ladera, but it has never been codified, if you will, or agreed to somewhere. And my thought was, is as part of doing the final plat, it needs to be marked on the drawings that says that's what it is.
So, can I ask a question of staff related to this? So, currently, what's the staff's understanding of what this open space, who's responsible for its maintenance once it's beyond final plat? And let's say you guys agree on the amenities and they're put in place, who maintains it? Who's responsible for maintaining it?
Correct.
So if the floodplain comes in and knocks out a lot of the improvements, they would be responsible for putting those back in place and cleaning it up.
Right. The guarantee of keeping it in working order would be the business improvement district, the way I understand it.
That is correct. That's our understanding.
So, yeah, so, I mean, there's part of the risk. The more things that you put in there, the more maintenance potential or costs associated with maintaining it if there is a significant flood.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
So Troy, I just want to clarify, without future development, where we're looking at, this is the only open space right now, right?
Without the future phase of the south, yeah, this is the only open space, and without any of the tracks being developed. So, for example, when they develop each tract, they may have a plaza or they may have a playground within the future tracts that serve those tracts.
Okay.
But for the overall development, until the southern one is developed, this is the only open space.
Can I make I have a point of clarification, if you don't mind? If you look at the map up there, you can see the blue area is what is actually in this preliminary plat. The open space north of it and the lake are already approved and in a final plat. And so there is existing open space in the development.
And so when we go back to those tracks, are those tracks also going to be required to have percentage open space or amenities?
So as each tract comes through its platting process, it'll be reviewed against the open space requirements. They have a PD overlay that sort of talks to the quantity of open space that they're required to have, and I know that that's 20%, and that includes all pervious areas. So the quantity-wise, they won't have a whole lot of extra. The open space or any quantity-wise being required, but then there's also the quality parts of the code that says, for example, in the multifamily part of their development, once that's developed, there's a certain ratio of number of units that triggers a certain size of a playground type amenity within that tract that has that multifamily. Single family developments, for example, have requirements for pocket parks and that sort of thing. So the commercial development has requirements for this 20% with the PD overlay of some sort of open space amenity, but it does include like landscape areas within a site plan for that. So.
And just from my reference, do we have anything else in town that might be similar to this as far as something in the floodplain where we've developed before?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, I just wanted to know
Yeah.
if this situation was unique that we're dealing with, or if we've had this before that we can reference somewhere else.
Oh, possibly the augmentation plan pond. That's the one that's just north of Old Town. You mean? Yeah. That serves the Timnath Lakes development. Oh, yeah, Weitzel Park, potentially as well, off of behind Walmart, might be similar.
Okay.
And
There's not much there. I mean, there's a trail. I've walked the augmentation pond. There's I've walked the augmentation pond, and there's a nice soft trail there, crushed granite trail, and I think there's something similar that was completed recently at the front end near the parkway, where there's seating and stone wall, but it's pretty minimal. Native grasses and a fence around the pond.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Holt.
At this point, knowing it's the preliminary, we're going to get to some of this, the fine details. It sounds like both parties are wanting to come to a good resolution. I'm not the expert on accessibility versus not. I see my gut instinct said when it was being presented that's pretty cool, and then I heard the term bobcat and people walking. That was a little weird. I get it, right? So I also know that when you have mass construction, animals tend to flee anyway. So I think the accessibility, will people use it? That part, I think, the fine details can get figured out in the final plat. At this point, I think the recommendations there to move forward, so at least that part of the project can continue. So that's where I'm at.
The comment was made that the town did not seem interested in having the land dedicated to us. What was the thought process in that? Okay.
He said it predates all of the staff that's currently here, so we're not quite sure, but it's not an active park, so it's more of a passive open space, and that Parks Department isn't really in the business of maintaining that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, we're not currently.
Not currently. Yeah.
I think there's been a desire expressed to try to preserve natural lands in and around town. And, I also note that we do have a small piece of almost adjacent land that at some point we need to figure out what to do with. But it sounds like that's not something that's been explored recently. I guess I make the point that if it is dedicated to the town can figure this out. Now, I'm also worried maybe there is risk and liability and what happens in a flood. Maybe we don't want to take that on. But it feels like, now you brought it up. Do you have having more history or context you could share with us?
What previous staff indicated is that the town thought it was going to be fairly intensive to maintain, and they didn't want to take that burden on for the town. Okay. Anybody disagree? Okay. Yeah. The level of amenities and the things with the new staff is different than what had been discussed with the prior.
All right, Councilmember Lake.
I have one final question. So, under the recommended motion, where it mentions that they shall comply with general provisions, and it lists a very specific section, which I had to look up because I don't know it all by heart. And that particular section is specifically related to community parks. But there are a lot of other things in the land use code that specifically talks about open space may include areas designated for preservation and protection of environmental resources, including floodplains, wetland areas, areas of critical or important habitat as defined by the Colorado Division of Wildlife, areas designated for agricultural preservation. Is there a reason why why staff feels specifically that it should be community park as opposed to these other open space areas that are allowed under our land use code?
That's a good question that I want to kind of go into. So the section that I quoted is this open space uses, which is under the general provisions that's under the open space design guidelines of or code standards of 5.7.6, right? So 5.7.6 is parks and open space, right? And then there's the subsection 3 that is general provisions, and then this is subsection D within that's open space uses. The only reason I called this particular one out is because the landscape plan they showed us at preliminary isn't there in our opinion. It's not satisfying the code yet. Everything else that they've shown us didn't need to get at a level of detail enough where we've identified any other places they're specifically not complying with the code. We will get to that level of detail at final, but that was one thing that we, from a staff perspective, said they're not quite there yet. However, it's not a preliminary plat issue. So we just wanted to clarify that the preliminary plat is not giving them approval of that code item because we're thinking that that's not quite there on that one item so far yet.
So if we as a council wanted to get rid of it where it mentions community park and we just want them to follow more of the open space guidelines, which according to the land use code looks like there's a little bit more flexibility, is that something? I just hate locking them into a community park if the idea is for a natural area or something to preserve some of the floodplain or something like that. And subsection D specifically mentions community park, which I believe is probably where the amenities piece comes into play.
Make sure we're looking at the same thing because I don't.
I'm looking on our little sheet on the town council report where it mentions at the very bottom recommended motion. It says I move to recommend approval with the following conditions. And condition 1 specifically mentions section 5.7.6.3 subsection D, and that's the part that is community park. as opposed to just general open space. So, because if we approve this motion with that in there, we are locking it in to a community park. And so I think if we maybe left that out, and I know we haven't come to vote or anything like that, but if we weren't as specific in our, if we move to approve this and we cut that part out and just leave it more general, it may be easier to come to some kind of agreement between staff and applicant.
I think you looked that up wrong, because I'm not seeing community park in that section.
Oh, maybe I'm looking at 5.762D.
2D is community park.
Yeah.
6.3D
6.3.
reads open space uses. Uses designated within the open space shall be appropriate to the context and character of the site and the intensity of the proposed development as determined by the town planner.
Yeah, that's the one I'm referring to.
Because if I look on our land use code, do you see it on there? And I'm looking at online, and 5.7.63 starts general provisions and starts with H.
The online code has a numbering problem.
The interactive code is online, apparently has a glitch in it.
But what your thought is why we were suggesting that the motion would say that it should be a natural area as opposed to an open space, was to clarify that we're trying to get guidance for ourselves as much as from them on where council is, and that's why we were making that proposal to the motion, that it would be qualified as a natural area as opposed to simply an open space.
And maybe just more of a clarification, but the staff's position on this is it could very well be 10, 15 years before the south accessibility to high-intensity parks and use is developed, and with the restaurants and things planned for up north, and the amount of activity there, that this wouldn't suffice the amount of folks coming in and out of it.
Yeah, that's correct.
But a slight tweak, like disc golf or something, would.
Right, or like a fishing pier and active use on the water, for example.
A stocked pond
something
type
like that. Yeah, and we have we sent an email today that gave them, kind of a laundry list of here's some things you might consider. But it's our role to react to what they propose as opposed to designing it for them. So.
Got it. There's a slide that, and I don't want to go back, but there's a slide that has a block very similar there that says community park. And can we go back a couple slides?
Let's see.
That actually has a diagram where it says community park. Do you know what I'm talking about?
It's one of the two that it was with the
I just want to see
floodway.
that and maybe get a better idea of when that'll be developed.
Jaden will get that up from the other side over here.
Just trying to avoid all. Yeah, that's bad.
There's the other one of the applicant's presentations, the big.
Block. It showed the actual pond down below, more of a diagram of the south.
The one that
There's
had
probably the
the
sketch plan.
public.
Yeah, there's probably the sketch plan. There you go. I thought that was it. And then there was a block even more.
It showed the south one as well.
Yeah, showed the south one as well. Yeah, right there. See that green block?
Yeah.
That shows a big community park. Right? Is that what the description of that is? Or neighborhood
It's-
park?
Oh, you mean in the center, like by that number 2? Right. So that would be associated with the multifamily component of well, it's one of the future tracks.
Would that suffice as active area for the commercial?
No, that, well, I mean, it could, but it's not being proposed until some date uncertain. Yeah. But it could as, yeah.
All right, any other questions on Area 1 here? Okay. I have some questions, but do others have questions about the plat generally? Okay. Yeah, we've spent a lot of time on this area because it's obviously been contentious. But I would like to hear a little bit more about the other areas that are being platted, specifically why they're being platted in the way that they are, and I'm really just interested in hearing about the transportation and access plans for each of the proposed sites, and then for the areas that were just doing large tracks but not doing lots, kind of what's that look like and what's that future process?
I'm going to have Jaden pull up my presentation so I can try to address those questions with one of my diagrams anyway. Yeah, okay, let me get... So this is showing all of the tracks and the lots. And so there's, just to refresh our memories, there's 3 lots kind of up there right below where it says Ladera third filing. And then there's 5 more lots, lots 4 through 9 down in the lower right corner. And then there's a lot of tracks for future development between them. I know they have users in mind for the north, at least 2 of the northern lots, and at least 1 of the southern lots, and I think you know, speculative. They can address that as well on the lots associated with them, and you know, critical mass of, you know, if they've already got users in mind for some of them, they're utilizing the infrastructure of the streets and utilities for other lots speculatively, but between the 2, they're not quite sure what they want to do specifically yet, so they're leaving them as tracks for future platting as soon as they have a user that you know they want to get approval for.
So again, remembering that the South Reservoir is currently a gravel pit. Tract C is where the asphalt plant and other stuff is currently residing. And I think the last time we were here, we told y'all, and up to everybody's relief, that the asphalt plant has been sold and is going to be decommissioned after Thanksgiving. And so it will be off the property by early next year on its way to Utah. Also, within the existing gravel pit, which incorporates parts of Tract C, D, and the reservoir, there is operations that are continuing in there with the leaser. And so the way, what's got to happen is there is fills that need to be made. The reservoir needs to be constructed with a liner that we are working on getting designed right now that needs to go all the way around the perimeter of that. At that point, and that's all part of the reclamation under the mining permit. At that point, they will exit the site by finishing and heading out Tract D. That's their way to exit. So that's why you have all of those big areas that are there, because it has to do with construction and mining operations. And until they can get all the material out and get complete with that lease and get the mining permit released. We are, Connell Resources is incrementally getting releases of the mining permit areas. And so, for instance, we will have the release that will be, I don't know if you can see there is a dotted line. You see where it says Ladera third filing in the blue box. The bottom line goes south of the bottom blue line, and there is a line across there. That is the quarter section line, which also happens to be the mining permit extent. So the mining permit didn't go north of there. So right now, they are in the process of decommissioning that piece, getting the materials out. All of that is underway, and so they're going to work their way out. We will get that removed from the mining plan. Right now, the expectation is that will be out of the mining plan to about 50 feet south of Las Tiendas Drive by the first quarter of next year. And then that'll be out of the mining permit and will be reclaimed by the miner, by Connell Resources. Similarly, we have to go in, do all the demobilization and get everything taken out, get seeding and erosion control established. And so all of those activities just take time to make the grass grow in order to get DRMS to release it from the mining plan. As to your question on accesses, as part of the third filing, we worked with Public Works, and we have an approved access control plan for Weitzel Street that lays out exactly where the accesses are, what those improvements will be, and all of that. So the accesses to all of those lots and parcels and tracts is established.
And you can see little stubs along Weitzel Street where the street intersections will be. There's like some access easements being dedicated that are right at the street intersections. So you can sort of visualize, where those will be.
All right, thank you for that clarification. Additional detail, I appreciate that. Mayor Pro Tem.
So down there, I want to ask about access for, looks like we've got lots 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So if these are, is that where delivery trucks are going to come in as well? When you talk about access, is that how it's all going to come down there as well?
Yeah, on those lower lots, those are private streets that, and we talked quite a bit, at least early on, about the character of those streets, and they've got the street cross sections as within the construction drawings. But yeah, the access for customers and deliveries will come in on those private streets.
Okay, and they're built to handle that. So we don't have any Lucas standards, anything that we're concerned about in those streets for delivery versus cars versus pedestrians in that area?
Yeah, they'll meet our standards.
Okay, so no accident.
Yeah.
Any concerns? Okay.
Yeah, and we did look at that real closely early on in the review.
Okay.
So.
And then I'm assuming, based on this drawing there, that the only access point for those lots are coming in for traffic. Nothing's going to come along County Road 5 for those lots in the back area. It's all going to come from
Weitzel
Street.
Right,
Is that
right. Other than pedestrian connections.
So yeah, there will be a restricted access. If you see out on County Road 5, it will not be a full movement. It'll be a right in, right out, I believe, for that. So, yep.
Between lot 6 and 7, that little stub there.
Yeah, so you'll have access also off of restricted access off of County Road 5, but then you'll have connectivity and accesses on the back too.
Okay.
But north of the intersection of Weitzel and County Road 5, there won't be any street connections out to County Road 5.
Correct.
Yeah. Just that one south of Weitzel. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
No questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, I've got more questions, but
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So I think you touched on this, but are we looking at traffic lights kind of in this access as well, where the big intersections are? Is that what those boxes are? Is that where traffic lights will be?
Yeah, we did an analysis, a study. So the one, I can't read it. It's
Las
Tiendas
Tiendas.
Drive. That will be a signalized intersection.
Okay.
The rest of them will be, restricted. There will be some full movement accesses too, but they'll be restricted. They do meet, like we said, we worked with the applicant to make sure we got the accesses lined out to meet the town standards.
Okay.
And we've done that, so.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. I think that's what I have on these plots. Thank you.
All right, other questions?
Just to clarify, the private streets you referred to, are those actually owned by the Business Improvement District as well? Okay, the Business Improvement District is not authorized, according to the operating plan, to own anything other than public improvements and cannot legally finance anything other than public improvements. So just to clarify, they're not town-owned streets, but they are public streets. They'll just be owned by a Business Improvement District.
Sounds like we have no more questions. Carolyn, I want to circle back and just make sure that you and I are on the same page with respect to the requested condition 1. First of all, there's some question about the numbering and the land use code.
Yeah, the online land use code is wrong with some of the lettering and numbering, just for a future heads up. Because as I'm sitting up here, that's the reference that I go to. So that's just something for later down the road.
But Carolyn, I'm inclined personally to not include that provision. I don't know that it actually does anything. I get it's symbolic, but I want to support staff, but I also want to be practical. From a legal standpoint, is that condition doing anything for us?
So what it does is it reflects that review comments on the preliminary plat were not necessarily completed, but should you approve this without that first condition, they will still be required to meet the conditions of section 5.7.6.3 subsection D in their final plat. They'll be resubmitting the landscape plan, and they will be required to meet that condition.
And then with respect to the applicant's suggestions, I'm not inclined to incorporate those, but it sounds like legally that might be problematic.
So I would recommend not making a finding that these are private improvements, because that would, like I said, it would prohibit the Business Improvement District from spending any money towards the improvements. They're not legally entitled to finance private improvements. And I believe that the definitions in the land use code are clear, because it defines open space, public as open space owned and maintained by a public agency, such as the town of Timnath, Larimer County, the state of Colorado, or other governmental entities. So I believe that's clear, that would include a Business Improvement District. And then in terms of the second requested change, that you define this as a natural area. A natural area is a subset of the open space. So there's not a separate criteria for natural space and natural area. And many of the times it's used I think it's used only 11 times in the land use code. It's usually in a list where it says trails, natural area, So we know that this is going to incorporate also trails for sure. And so the definition of open space already includes natural areas, but it also includes the trails and the picnic tables and the signs. And so I feel that it's appropriate to consider this under the open space criteria.
Okay, thank you. At this point, is there a motion to recommend approval of the Ladera South preliminary plat with the following conditions, just condition two, to allow staff to work with the owner applicant to address minor, non-substantive modifications during the final plat?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we'll move to discussion. Councilmember Lake.
So I certainly hope that all of you can work together to come up with something that meets everyone's kind of qualifications. I personally, which again, this is too early, but I kind of agree with Bill as well that that area does seem to me that if it were more of an open space kind of feel, it would fit in with that area. But again, the way the wording is in our code is that you work with the town planner to come up with something that everyone kind of agrees with there. But I think overall, the details can be worked out later. I think this meets all of the requirements for passage of the preliminary plat, and I will be supporting it.
All right, Councilmember Holt.
No, I'm in favor of this. I think to Councilmember Lake's comments, making the best use of that, accessibility, but preserving what is extremely important, I think is key. And I think you guys are on a great start, and we'll get that accomplished. But yeah, I'm in support of it.
Councilmember Jenkins.
Yeah, I'll be supporting the motion. I do hope that both staff and the applicant are able to come to a reasonable solution on the open space portion. So I think the other criteria obviously have been met, and I'll support this.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I'll be supporting the motion. I read through the review criteria, and my questions were answered around the transportation design is adequate, so I will be supporting this motion.
I will also support this. I come at it from the perspective of what does the land use code say in terms of preliminary plat review criteria. I feel like we kind of got into the weeds here beyond the scope of a preliminary plat, and I really am mindful of why we're here in looking at the 6 review criteria. I did have some questions about the utility and transportation plan being adequate. We got some explanation there. I appreciate that there has been a traffic study to look at that. I probably just would have felt better hearing some more detail there. With respect to, the northernmost area there, I guess my thought is we need to look at Ladera as a whole project. We approved a PD overlay for that. There certainly is a vision looking at, does the entire area serve all the various needs that were pitched? I can see how the south area could be the more actively programmed area. With respect to the north area, I think that accessibility, regardless, is important. What exactly that looks like, I think there's lots of ways to make that happen, but I do think it should be accessible as opposed to just completely left as unattended area. So I will support this and look forward to seeing this continue to be developed. So with that, all those in favor of approving the preliminary plat with the one condition allowing the applicant to work with staff to make minor modifications signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, nay? All right, this does pass unanimously. I believe we have run out of agenda items, so we will stand adjourned.